You hear the headline while getting ready for work. Markets are up again, another record high. Analysts on television talk about strong growth, resilient companies, and economic momentum. On paper, everything sounds positive. But later that same day, a coworker mentions cutting back on groceries. A friend texts about rising rent. Someone else talks about picking up extra work just to stay comfortable. The economy is supposedly doing well, yet the people around you don't seem to feel it. And that contradiction has become one of the defining experiences of modern economic life. For much of the 20th century, economic growth followed a pattern people could see and feel. When companies performed well, hiring increased. Wages rose alongside productivity. Communities expanded. A strong economy translated into visible improvement for ordinary workers. The connection wasn't perfect, but it felt direct enough that people trusted the system. Growth meant opportunity, and opportunity meant progress. Today, growth still exists, but its effects feel different. Corporate earnings reports remain strong. Stock markets recover quickly from downturns. Large companies expand globally and operate more efficiently than ever before. Yet many workers describe a sense of stagnation. They work longer hours, adapt to new technologies, and produce more value, but their personal financial stability doesn't seem to grow at the same pace. Part of this change comes from how modern companies operate. Advances in technology allow businesses to scale without increasing labor in the same way they once did. Automation, software, and global supply chains enable productivity gains that don't always require more employees. Companies can grow revenue while keeping payroll relatively stable. From a business perspective, this efficiency is logical. From a worker's perspective, it changes how growth is experienced. Imagine a company that doubles its output using automation rather than hiring twice as many people. Profits rise, shareholders benefit, the business appears successful. But the link between company success and widespread wage growth weakens. Economic expansion still occurs, it simply reaches fewer people directly. Globalization also plays a role. Businesses now operate across borders, sourcing labor and production wherever it is most efficient. This creates lower prices for consumers in many cases, but it also increases competition for workers. Jobs that once existed locally can shift elsewhere, and wage pressure becomes more complex. Growth continues globally even as individual communities experience uneven outcomes. Another shift involves how companies measure success. Over recent decades, shareholder value has become a dominant priority. Businesses focus heavily on efficiency, profitability, and long-term investor returns. This encourages cost control, lean staffing, and productivity improvements. These strategies strengthen companies financially, but they can also limit how broadly gains are distributed among employees. At the same time, workers themselves face rising costs that absorb income growth. Housing, healthcare, education, and insurance expenses increase regardless of company performance. Even when wages rise, these structural costs often grow alongside them. The result is a strange experience where people technically earn more but feel no additional security. You can see this disconnect in everyday life. News reports celebrate economic strength while households quietly adjust budgets. Promotions feel meaningful emotionally but less impactful financially. People achieve milestones that once signaled stability, yet still feel uncertain about the future. The economy expands statistically while confidence expands more slowly. Technology amplifies awareness of this gap. Workers see headlines about record profits or executive compensation while managing tighter personal budgets. Information travels instantly, making contrasts more visible than ever before. Even when comparisons lack full context, the emotional effect is powerful. People sense success exists somewhere, just not fully reaching them. This creates a psychological tension that didn't exist as strongly in earlier eras. When growth feels shared, optimism grows naturally. When growth feels distant, motivation changes. Workers may still strive for advancement, but expectations shift toward preservation rather than transformation. Stability becomes the goal instead of upward mobility. Businesses, meanwhile, respond to competitive pressure rather than individual sentiment. Companies operate in global markets where efficiency determines survival. Decisions that feel impersonal at the individual level often reflect systemic incentives. Managers reduce costs not necessarily out of indifference, but because the system rewards efficiency above all else. Over time, this dynamic reshapes workplace culture. Loyalty weakens because both employers and employees expect change. Workers invest less emotional identity in careers that may shift unexpectedly. Companies rely more on flexibility than permanence. The relationship between labor and growth becomes more transactional. None of this means the economy is failing. In many ways, it is functioning exactly as designed. Innovation continues, businesses expand. Consumers still benefit from new products and services. But the distribution of benefits has changed enough that personal experience no longer matches collective indicators. This is why conversations about the economy often feel disconnected. One person points to strong growth statistics, another points to personal financial strain. Both perspectives can be accurate at the same time. The system produces success, but not always in ways individuals immediately feel. As this gap persists, behavior begins to change. Workers prioritize job flexibility over long-term loyalty. People diversify income streams. Financial planning shifts toward resilience rather than aggressive growth. The culture adapts quietly to a world where economic success feels less predictable at the personal level. A year passes, and these adjustments start to feel normal. Side work becomes common. Career paths look less linear. Success stories sound different, less about rapid advancement and more about maintaining balance. The meaning of progress evolves without anyone officially declaring a new era. The deeper question isn't whether companies are succeeding or workers are struggling. It's how expectations formed in an earlier economic model collide with a system that now operates differently. When people were taught that growth would lift everyone equally, today's uneven experience feels confusing, even unfair. Understanding this shift doesn't require blaming individuals or institutions. It requires recognizing that incentives shape outcomes. Businesses optimize for efficiency and growth. Workers optimize for stability and security. When those goals move out of alignment, tension appears even without crisis. And that tension may explain why economic news often feels disconnected from everyday life. The economy may be growing in measurable ways, while emotional confidence grows more slowly. Success exists, but its visibility changes depending on where you stand inside the system. So perhaps the real story isn't that growth has disappeared. It's that growth has become harder to feel personally. The economy continues moving forward, but the experience of that movement has changed. And until expectations adjust to match reality, many people will continue hearing good news about the economy while quietly wondering why it doesn't feel like good news at all.